Hello and welcome to A Word with Ward, a podcast focused on the high-growth world of data centers. In Series 1, I speak with some of the most prominent entrepreneurs of the industry. Those who've either already founded, scaled and exited businesses in this space, or who are currently on that journey. If you've got an interest in the industry, these are the people that you're going to want to hear from. I think I'm going to learn a thing or two along the way, and if you give it a listen, you might too. Today's guest is David Bloom, founder and chairman of Kao Data. David has a wide-ranging background with over 17 years' experience in the TMT industry as an investor, founder, and investment manager. He has personally overseen the deployment of more than £500 million of equity investment. Having founded Kao in 2014, David served as board member and in September 2023 became the company's chairman. A serial founder, David founded IP Vision in 2007, Goldacre in 2012, and Ned Data Centers, an Israeli-based owner-operator for the Middle Eastern data center market in 2022. David also has a keen interest in education, having been a youth director and school gubbin. Okay, well, good afternoon, David, and thanks very much for joining me, and welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Great. So look, before we get stuck into what the show is really about, I'd like to get your take on something that I know is very close to both our hearts, and that's the football. So I know you're...
No more penalty.
Yeah, well, it's actually, I know you're a big gunner, as in an Arsenal fan. Yeah. I had a season ticket at Man City for around 20 years before I left the UK. As we talk, Arsenal are top of the Premier League with 71 points and City are 1 point behind in third. And so shaping up to be a very interesting three-horse race with Liverpool over the final 7 games. How do you think the title race will play out from here?
Oh, gosh. I mean, what I can tell you is I'd like to just freeze time at this point of this podcast and just not go anywhere. Look, I genuinely, I think it's anybody's title. I think the statistics say Arsenal will do it. Yeah, because of the form, but the history says that City will do it, and I suppose the narrative, or if you're going to look at it as kind of life as a story, it says that Klopp will do it in his last season. So that is all to play for, really, and I will be at the Villa game on Sunday, sort of biting my nails.
Yeah. I think it's definitely going to be the most interesting running that we've had, and depending on how things go, we might be facing each other in the Champions League as well. Yeah.
If we can win the second leg, both of us, that's definitely a possibility. But it's undoubtedly going to be, probably since actually the Aguero goal. It's going to be the most interesting climax to a season for a long time.
Yeah. And as we discussed, the victor will be buying the drinks at Data Cloud.
100%.
Yeah. Although we may have to find a Liverpool fan. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so look, I've already given the listeners an overview of your background as an investor, founder, and investment manager. Now, this podcast is all about entrepreneurial journeys, and you're a serial founder, having founded IP Vision, Goldacre, Kao, and Ned Data Centers. But yes. I would like to focus most of today's chat around Kao and where relevant, Goldacre. So, with that in mind, can I take you back roughly 1 decade? So, you'd already founded digital infrastructure investment firm Goldacre a couple of years earlier, and you were about to start Kao Data.
Yeah.
So, could you talk to me around, what was your burning ambition to start the business and how you went about that?
So, in the previous decade, I'd been on the other side, I suppose, of the table in being, founder of technology companies or working for technology companies. And I suppose the politest way of putting this is that VC-funded businesses go through phases, and so there's always a point in time where you're doing something that we politely call managing cash flow, which otherwise known as not paying certain people. And don't worry, they all got paid in the end. But now, what I found super interesting and what triggered my thought process around KO and digital infrastructure in general was back in the days of running a business prior to sort of digital transformation. Things that were sacrosanct to every business were things like rent, utilities, staff pay, those type of things. And actually, I found increasingly the other thing that you would avoid at all costs in sort of delaying being paid would be your hosting, your infrastructure, because in a digital business, in a digital world, that was really the highway on which your business operated, the high street, whatever it was. And so it kind of made me realize that what was then in sort of 2006, 7 kind of considered a very alternative type of asset, very little understood, etc., was actually going to go on this journey to the mainstream, to core, to like really underpinning everything that was going on. And so I decided in 2012 I wanted to become a purveyor of picks and shovels as opposed to somebody digging for gold. And that's kind of what the original motivation was.
Great. And can you talk us through a little bit around the process of how the business was founded, and talk around those early days?
So people have two different tacks to this. Business founders will either tell you of the absolute crystal clarity with which they approached the early days, and some will tell you of the multitude of fortuitous events that led them to where they are today. I think the truth probably lies somewhere in between. Absolutely kind of started out with the vision that I just described. But I would say that, very early on, I think the two interesting turning points had very little to do with me, in the sense of, so Nortel Networks, who were a Canadian telco of blessed memory, went bust. And the first, which was highly unexpected at the time. Now, what that meant was the site that today is the Kao Data Harlow campus was in fact previously the Nortel Networks European headquarters. And so I was coming out of the back of another business, and I got this phone call saying that this opportunity is that this site and the whole business has gone into administration, and someone was buying it out from the bondholders, and someone had mentioned to them that it could be useful for this thing called data centers or digital infrastructure. Would I take a look at it? And so it was literally on the back of that I found myself standing on a disused, vacated site in Harlow, of 500,000 square foot of offices, which is quite, when it's all empty, is quite intimidating. Sort of thinking to myself, this is quite interesting. And because of the nature of what they did, there was already an element of power there. There was already an element of comms. And so it kind of went from there. So I suppose the early plan was a mixture of, this is a space I want to be in, but the opportunity itself kind of came out a bit of left field.
Yeah. And look, I understand you've held a number of different roles within the business over the years.
Yes.
So can you maybe talk to me a little bit around how your role within the business has shifted and changed over the years?
So yes, correct. I mean, on day one, there was just me. So I suppose I was all roles: CEO, chief bottle washer, and general digger of ditches. Then, so we kind of incubated the business within Goldacre. So Matt Harris, actually, who is now the CFO of Kao, was my first hire into Goldacre, actually. So, as with a lot of people that end up working with me, the original intention was for him to be the CFO of Kao. We just took an 8-year diversion to that, the scenic route. So, so at the beginning, really, I was, if you want to call it that, I was the CEO. I drove the business. We did all the initial bringing the power to site, doing remediation of the site, raising the capital. So it was kind of write the theme tune, sing the theme tune. For those of you that remember that sketch, and then really it came to the point in about 2015-16 where we had meaningfully put a spade in the ground, and I knew that there was going to come a point in time where I would need to start hiring some really, because the industry, as you know, thrives on two things: certainty of delivery, and I suppose track record of operations. So I needed to bring some of that into the business, which is actually when I was blessed with hiring Paul Finch, who you may know, and at the same sort of around about a similar time decided that the kind of the business needed. I was doing some other things as well, and the business needed sort of day-to-day CEO focus. So especially on sales. So we were joined by Jan Dan Lux, who is now I believe in the Netherlands with escapes me
QTS.
QTS, that's it, right? So and they were really the first sort of two external hires, and that's when Kao became an independent business of Goldacre. So then, I continued to fulfill sort of a CEO role for a while. Then that transitioned to JD. We brought in a few more people. And then it was the second tipping point was really 2019, where we went out for our first sort of meaningful round of institutional capital, which was when Legal & General came on board. And in doing so, that began my journey as more of a board member than a day-to-day operator in the business. And sort of over time, we helped build out the team more. Spencer, some of the sort of operations guys, Gerard, and that made a lot of sense, and it was progressing in the right way. But when last year, Lee Mail, who was the current chief executive, because JT departed at the time of the Legal & General transaction, it just felt right that in reality the business was at an inflection point where we knew we could go to the next level, but it kind of felt it needed that founder input. So I'm back, bit like Slim Shady, although maybe slightly less slim, and really, to be honest, it's always, it's one of the businesses that I've been involved in over the years that's the closest to my heart. I really believe in Kao. I really love what we do, and it's a real pleasure to get up in the morning to do something that you actually enjoy. It's underrated. Money's not everything. I don't worry, I get paid, but it's the ability to see something go from literally zero, both to where we are today and where I know that we're going to be able to go tomorrow. So yes, I've held a lot of different roles in the business, but ultimately I've only ever held one role, which is sort of chief cheerleader and champion of what I think Kao can become.
Great, interesting. And then, as you rightly pointed out, you brought in some very seasoned executives early on in the journey, most of whom had worked for some of the more mature global operators within this space. Yep. So how did you initially go about bringing those people in and selling the vision of the business to those kind of individuals?
Yeah, it's a really good question, because I'll rephrase it slightly for you. Why on God's green earth did Paul Finch and Gerard Tilo come to Kao? Especially when we were sort of you end up being sort of Man United around the board, but Macclesfield on the pitch, right? Yeah. So I mean, one really easy answer, I think it's generally referred to as stalking. I kind of hunted them down, and yeah, I hope and I feel that the passion for what I wanted to do was coming across. I think you've also got to bear in mind at the time there'd been no new entrant to the London market for about 6 or 7 years at the time, and I was utterly convinced. And Harlow sat a little bit off piste as well, and so I gave everybody the vision of where I thought the market was going, where I thought life sciences in particular was going. So even then, I've been kind of banging the life sciences drum for 5 years. Thank God it finally actually happened. But you have seen this, that the sector has sort of shifted from purely almost a banking and finance driven sector all the way across now in probably 7 or 8 really key verticals, including life sciences, which is growing quite rapidly. So I think that was a combination of really selling them the vision, and actually, again, maybe something that's become a bit more common than it is today, but respecting the engineering. So a lot of the businesses were founded by entrepreneurs such as myself, and they were kind of, the main act. And actually, the real rock stars of this sector are the guys that are delivering day in, day out, quality facilities, high grade operations for the end customers. And I wanted to put those guys more front and center than it just be a financial or commercial exercise. And so I think it was that opportunity to almost step out from behind the shadows of the engineering and be put more front and center that attracted them in the end. But in some ways, you might have to do another podcast where you ask them that question.
Thanks for listening to A Word with Ward. We're not funded by anybody, so we don't have any hidden agenda. We're just talking to some of the most interesting people in data centers. We have had some help creating some of our questions from Sixth Sense Consulting, a team of business psychologists and executive coaches for both teams and individuals. We partner with Sixth Sense during the assessment phase when delivering executive search assignments. If you've got any burning questions you want to ask a data center entrepreneur in Series 1, please drop me a line at ward@thewayofward.com. Before the break, me and David were having a chinwag about the football and how we got KO off the ground in the early days. Next, we're going to talk about what we can expect to see from the business in 2024 and beyond. And we also talk about the future of the industry and what people aren't talking about that they should be. Well, there's been some big news this year for KO with the appointment of Doug Lowy as CEO. Someone I've got a lot of time for because he's not only a great executive, but he's a really good human being as well. And you've announced a 40 megawatt build on the outskirts of Manchester, more specifically in Reddish, Stockport, which is about 3 miles from where I used to live when I was last in the UK. So can you tell us a little bit more about what we can expect to see from KO in 2024 and beyond?
Sure. I mean, we are unabashedly and unashamedly on a growth trajectory. We have set ourselves up now as leaders in the AI space. We've been doing high density compute for the life sciences sector before it was even sexy. So really now, especially with Legal & General and Morrison's Infratil on board, we've got a very clear direction of travel of new sites, expansion. We have European ambition, which we are putting a lot of time and effort now into actualizing in 2024. So it's about life in general always. I mean, something I personally learned very early on and wish I could apply as well as I claim to know it, is knowing who you are, what you do, and how to say no. This is a market and a sector which there is plenty to be done, but it's actually worthwhile spending time thinking about what's your focus, what are your geographies, what's your USP, if you have one, and we like to feel that we do, and how do you want to run your business? And so actually part of bringing in Doug, I mean, I'm glad that you mentioned both his background in the sector, but also the fact that he's a stand-up fellow, because again, we do this day in, day out. The people that we work with on the team has to be, for me anyway, a positive experience. It unfortunately, the nature of the capex spend in data centers often overshadows the big thing here, which are the people and the skills. It's interesting because there's very few sectors where usually a business's core or largest cost is its people. But actually, data centers sort of bucks that trend, because when you're spending hundreds of millions of pounds delivering, whether you're spending £2 million on people or £3 million on people doesn't seem to matter, but actually it matters a heck of a lot, because it is those skills that are going to mean a difference between good delivery, on-time delivery, quality operations, good relationships, and not just be a business that's about kilowatts, but a business that's about customers. And I think there is starting to be a differentiation in the sector where those people who are engaging people as customers and as partners, versus sort of stack it high, sell it cheap, and try and make a turn, I think are differentiating themselves in two different ways.
Yeah. Then, what's the roadmap for Manchester? What stage are you at with that site now? And
so, as you know, we just in the past week or so received full planning permission. So demolition of the old cement factory is going to begin in the next couple of weeks. So hopefully there'll be opportunity soon for me to wear a hard hat. Do love that. Bit of high vis, can't go wrong.
Sure.
And it's a program of, we will do the demolition, we'll then move on to the shell and core, and then start the process of, and obviously in the background, we are working with clients and customers who want to join us on this journey of what we firmly believe, and I think is starting to play out in the wider press, of the sort of digital northern powerhouse that we really firmly believe that Manchester both is and is swiftly becoming. So everyone talks about leveling up and infrastructure and things, but actually, like with most growing economies, a lot of the growth is coming in the digital sector. And so it's absolutely imperative, in my view, that places that are as significant as Manchester need to up their game in terms of what they're delivering in terms of that digital infrastructure. So we plan to be a big part of that.
Yeah. And how would you describe your appetite for risk in terms of deploying capital without customers, doing speculative builds?
So, how would you say my appetite for risk, or the shareholder?
Yes. Both, I suppose.
I mean, you're talking to the guy that delivered an on-spec building the first building in Harlow, completely completed with not a single customer in it. So, I'm quite risk on.
Yeah.
However, I have matured. I think we take a very pragmatic approach. So, we are not a party. We are an operator. We understand how this works. In the sense of, we have customers, we have a sales pipeline. You need to bring product, in my view, closer to market than a brownfield site with a bit of power, because buying decisions are not made in the main on sort of 36-month cycles. They're made on 6 to 12-month cycles. So frankly, it's not a question of, what's our risk appetite. If you want to be meaningfully in this game, you have to be prepared to put a spade in the ground. So we always have, I think we always will, but it's methodical. At the end of the day, you can also break down these developments into very obvious and clear phases, all the way from, planning and demolition and then shell and then power and then along that journey, it's probably best to not sit around doing nothing else. You should probably be out there talking to those customers, informing them of the product, really kind of getting them in behind it, so that at the right point in time, you do have that certainty, or at least those initial clients that help you to do that first phase. But no, I mean, I am not an advocate of, nor a believer in this idea that the magical sort of pre-let from a piece of dirt activity. Maybe it has happened, maybe it happens occasionally, but I don't think what's the saying? One swallow does not make a summer. So I think that if you're really meaningfully in this space, it means that you're constantly putting capital in the ground.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you've touched on your ambitions into Europe, but you may want to keep your cards very close to your chest on this. But are you able to disclose anything about potential markets that you might be looking at, or not?
Well, so there's definitely things I can say. Is that, well, I would say two things. Is that we again are believers in new neighborhoods. Trademarked our glory. Just to always make sure that I credit those who come up with these things. But new neighborhoods in existent places are, I think, quite interesting. I mean, Harlow effectively was that. It is a London play, but it was definitely a new neighborhood. So yes, we are looking at, I would say, the flap market, but more, I would say, the F and the A than the P. But we again are always trying to say, well, where do we think the market's going next? Which also brings us to next tier cities. Not tier 2. We don't like tier 2 because actually, these are genuinely becoming, very rapidly core locations. So, I think that that does them a disservice. So that's where we see ourselves playing in the European landscape. It's highly unlikely that we are going to go after a very, sort of, I would say, old school delivery in an existent availability zone in Europe. Primarily because, again, we're seeing a shift in requirements, a shift in what workloads need to be placed where, and we're also entering an era where our customers need to become more sophisticated about slicing and dicing that data and where it goes and what it does, because we have limitations that perhaps we didn't have before: power, land availability, time to market. So we have to continuously improve how we deliver as an operator, but also how the customers segregate their workloads for what needs to be where. Which is again back to this point about new neighborhoods next to cities, places like Manchester. They obviously have a role to play. I mean, it's becoming very obvious.
Yeah, great. Well, good luck with those plans. Certainly be keeping my eyes peeled on the industry of press, moving forward to see where that might be. I think it's safe to say you wear a number of different hats today. I think I heard you say on a podcast with Joao at the Tech Capital that your chairman role at KO accounts for roughly 50 to 60% of your time.
Yes.
So I suppose I'm always interested to understand how entrepreneurs like you maintain your energy levels, particularly when operating across multiple challenging and demanding roles. I mean, you've touched on this already, in that you really enjoy what you do. But can you talk to me about how you do that? I mean, what continues to make you feel energized about what you do?
Well, look, I think we're going to get really deep here now, Ward, because there's only you and me here. So, look, humans thrive. It's really interesting because most people think that they should shy away from adversity because adversity is bad. Yeah. But actually, there's one thing that's worse than adversity, and that's irrelevance. Humans need purpose. We need engagement. We need to understand why we do what we do and have a point in the distance that we're trying to get to. And that absolutely is what energizes me. I would also like to be brutally honest and say sometimes I overdo it, burn myself out a bit. So I do go through classic cycles like that. But I always come back to it because it's what really, so I always have this when I'm in that place where I'm thinking, gosh, I could do with a holiday. Yeah. I always think, it's the escape to the country, or, I could swap this for some idyllic sort of field somewhere. And the reality is, you kind of go and do that for a bit. And by sort of night 4 or 5, you're sitting there thinking, bit bored. And so, look, I think there is nothing positive in some ways about disengaging. And so my energy really comes from that. I've learned that of the two options of tranquility, maybe if you want to put it that way, but non-stimulation versus engaging with, frankly, what is a great industry, primarily good people, a really bold vision. Yeah, I'm lucky. I'm lucky to be able to do that, and I do count myself most days as lucky. And so that's what really keeps me energized. I should probably also say that what also keeps me motivated to come out to work every morning is I've got 4 kids. So staying at home is not a great idea. So there are bills to pay. But it's funny though as well, is because over the years I think that as well. I again, just you and me here, but I had kids quite young. My eldest was born when I was 21. Yeah, that's correct. And so I think it gives you a different perspective on life and continuity and the things that you want to try and achieve. So I probably was forced to overperform in my 20s as opposed to travel around and do stuff. And so I kind of got this bug quite early on of building things. And data centers is the ultimate build project. Yeah, so that's kind of what keeps me buzzing.
Great. Yeah, thanks for that. Okay, I've got quite a broad question here, so answer it in any way you see fit. But what do you see as the future of the sector?
Oh, I see as the future of the sector. I mean, stock answer at the moment is it's all about artificial intelligence. I'm going to try and go a different direction. I think the sector is going to become, in some ways, a bit more diverse on a number of fronts than it has been. Geographically diverse. I think there's a lot more to come in that regard. Interestingly, also more diverse in terms of who is attracted into the sector. I think that it is still a young industry comparative to other sectors like, I don't know, real estate or retail, and so actually I think we also have a long way to go, and we're going to see changes in how businesses are operated, what they, as I said, big niches that actually kind of make sense now that there is more scale. And I think lastly, we are needing to spend a lot more time and focus on energy. So yes, the headline is AI is going to do X, Y, and Z, but below the surface, one of the implications of that is a very real large consumption of energy, right? So how do we produce that? What makes sense? We have to also take into consideration our environmental responsibilities. Yeah. And so I think that innovation is actually going to be the next stage of innovation here in this sector is not what it's necessarily been in the past, which has been about, what the compute can do, is that how we actually generating that compute, and whether it's looking at silicon and making that more efficient, whether it's looking at nuclear power. There's been in the paper, they've been in the industry rags the past few days. There's going to be shifts, and so again, that's what makes it exciting, is that it's not a sector which sits around doing rinse and repeat. There's always something you could improve upon. So for me, yes, AI is the driver of all of this, but I think it's going to be the innovation and delivery that's going to be the exciting part.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Yep. And final question for you, David. In your opinion, what are people in the industry not talking about that they should be?
So I have a soapbox for this. I'll get out now and stand on as my wand. So we have been a sector that, by definition, has been in the background. Yeah. That it's almost the role, right? Yeah. Secure, redundant. Yeah. Not redundant in not needed, and then redundancy. Yeah. And it sort of led to a set of behavior that means that we actually don't kind of come out of the background. We're being forced to, in reality, because the man on the street, or woman, or person, is becoming much more aware of what it is our sector does, what impact that can have positively and negatively on their local communities. I mean, you talk about Stockport, and you live 3 miles away. Obviously, I know this, we'll try and organise some sort of blue plaque ceremony when we actually sort of deliver the first building. But so for example, local engagement there has been super important. We're really getting under the skin of the local community, its needs, local skill sets. Yeah, so I think that we, as a sector, what we're not talking about is our role in the public domain. And when you end up on Panorama at 8 o'clock at night, on BBC One, you're no longer something in the background. Yeah. Now, we can talk about that individual things another time, but I mean, 2 notable points about that was, there clearly wasn't the people they managed to dig up to be experts. Yeah. I don't think either of you or I would have recognized. Yeah. So therefore, what that means is we're not doing a good job at engaging. Yeah. And there was very little, I would say, follow-up from the sector as a whole to represent itself. Now, that is an approach, but it's a very head in the sand approach of if we're just quiet enough, everybody will go away, right? But no, just what is becoming a zeitgeist is, well, hang on a minute, where are my bank details, and who does have access to my data, and Cambridge Analytica, and this, that, and the other. So these things have all built up over time to mean that we are on the agenda. Yeah, whether it's for what we're delivering in terms of amazing AI, whether it's for power consumption and how is that happening and what does that mean, whether it's for new job sectors and how we're skilling people up. So I suppose the thing I would say that we need to talk about more is ourselves, and really get out there beyond just this sort of industry dialogue and the sort of inward facing, looking at it from we need to actually turn around and go outwards. Yeah, because if you don't tell your story, general point in life, someone else will. Yeah, and it won't necessarily be you won't necessarily recognize it when it's told by others. So, our opportunity is to get on the front foot. We do a lot of really important and good work, and we should be more proud of it and trumpet it a bit more and engage on the difficult points and work out how we do them better. There's, no industry or individual is perfect. It's really a matter of, are you being proactive in that engagement?
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. Well, look, thank you very much for joining me today. Really interesting to hear more about the journey so far, and wish you all the best with everything that's to come for KO and all of your other entrepreneurial interests.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much for having me, and look forward to finding that Liverpool fan for that drink.
Yeah. Okay.
Something like a free drink, right?
Exactly. Yeah. All right. Well, I'll see you in Cannes.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot, Ward.
Thanks, David.